American Timelines is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network, powered by Ortho Carolina. Find out more at queencitypodcastnetwork.com.
So now I'm obsessed with time. Come on, tell me about the time. Had it all in my hand tonight. Had the time of my life.
Welcome to another episode of
American Timelines.
I'm Amy, and that's Joe.
And we have another special guest this week who's going to help us cover November of 1950. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, from the Nerd Skool Podcast, Artstar. Welcome, Art.
Hello.
How are you?
How's it going?
Excelsior.
Wonderful.
Thanks for coming on the show.
No problem.
Yeah.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us about Nerd Skool real quick, as if our listeners haven't heard enough.
Well, Nerd Skool, it's me, Tiffany, TBJ, and Joe's brother, Andy. We are a group of nerds who are trying to teach Joe how to calm down and be a nerd. Joe's like that little kid who has so many questions. You answer one question, it's like but why? But why? Oh. And what we do is we try to answer his but whys. But whys? That sounds really weird. But in the process, we also go over the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and every so often we go into different other universes. DC, we just recently did the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. So it's pretty much just us sitting there trying to teach Joe how to, be a part of nerd culture.
Yeah, you really should listen to it because nerddom.
It's a lot of fun banter that goes on too. Like me and Tiffany, we're like night and day.
It is.
Then
it is.
Andy sits back, takes it all in, and then just be like, he has this "what did I get myself in" kind of attitude, and then Joe just like constantly going off. So it's a pretty fun environment.
And I'll say it's harder than you think to reel these guys in, because when nerds get excited about nerd topics, bringing them back to the subject is very difficult because they're all excited.
Yeah, I really. All I've been telling everybody is how the one on WandaVision, how I really just listening back to it.
Yeah,
I was really excited.
You were.
It was my baby and I created it. I just man, I was excited. So
you were, and
it was pretty good.
I was getting a lot of entertainment. I mean, you probably heard me laughing throughout the beginning because you were just so fired up, and that you're knowing you in general, you're kind of a reserved, laid back kind of guy. So seeing you fired up about anything was hilarious and entertaining. And then just the whole thing about, that's what I think I love. And I said this on the show. This is what I love about nerds is they get so passionate and excited about just trivial things. Like it's just a show, like it's just a comic book, it's just a thing. But they get so excited about it that it's kind of like harnessing that passion and then helping non-nerds understand that passion. That's kind of what we're trying to do.
Right.
So anyway, it's a lot of fun. Some people aren't into it; they're just not into nerdy stuff. But if you are, I think it's got its whole.
And it's funny because they quote unquote aren't into nerdy stuff, but they like nerdy stuff and just don't know that they're liking nerdy stuff.
Yeah. Right.
So it's one of those kind of things.
Yeah, I think you're right. People need to give it a chance, because I've had a lot of friends no thanks, that's too much for me. But I'm like, no, I'm telling you, it's helping you. It's bridging the gap between non-nerds and nerds who all love the same things. They just love it in different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, we try to do that. Anyway, Nerd Skool by History for Jerks. Check it out, Nerd Skool Pod. It's now on everything. It's on Stitcher and Apple and Google Podcasts and everywhere you get your podcasts. Finally, took a while. But yeah, we're out there. So we're going to jump in. Without further ado, we're going to jump in. Artstar is here to help us cover November of 1950. He's got some research done. Amy's going to start us off, though, because her story happens at the beginning of the month, which...
Yes, on November 1st, 1950.
Normally Amy's last, but we're going to start with Amy this time, and then we're going to work in me and Artstar later. So, Amy, why don't you just take us off with November 1st, 1950, which was a Wednesday. What do you got for us?
I am going to talk about the attempted assassination of Harry S. Truman.
Oh. I was not aware anybody tried to assassinate Harry S. Truman. Were you, Art?
I was not.
Yeah.
I was not.
So assassinations have succeeded in killing 4 presidents.
Okay.
And several other presidents have survived attempted assassination.
So, let's see. The ones that were killed were JFK.
JFK.
Yeah, Reagan didn't get shot. Who got killed?
Reagan got shot, but he didn't get killed.
Yeah, right. He didn't get killed.
Was Lincoln president when he got killed?
Yeah, Lincoln. Yeah, Lincoln, JFK. There was 4?
Yeah.
McKinley? Was that the other one?
Yeah.
McKinley was killed?
I think.
There was one
We
where...
should probably Google this real quick because...
There was one where the guy...
And
Was it
edit
Grover?
it in.
Grover Cleveland? The one where the guy...
Garfield.
Garfield is the one where the guy... Maybe it wasn't McKinley. Garfield was the one where the guy... I love this one because they didn't have security back in the old days. Like Lincoln didn't have any security, like even then. But when I think Garfield that was shot, there was a guy at a train station that had a gun like taped to his like bandage. Like he had his hand bandaged up and there was a gun in there, but it was all bandaged up like he hurt broke his hand. They just said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And then shot him in the back.
It was McKinley.
McKinley was the other one.
Yep.
Well, McKinley wasn't the one shot with a bandage, was it?
That's that
Either
old
McKinley
school espionage kind of stuff.
Maybe it was McKinley. It was either McKinley or...
The whole hidden gun.
How was Garfield assassinated?
He was at the railroad station.
Oh, Garfield was the one at the train station.
Yeah.
McKinley was shaking hands with people, though. Same kind of thing, though.
It's a Temple of Music in Buffalo, New York, is where McKinley was assassinated.
Oh, okay.
He was attending the Pan American Exposition. He was shot twice in the abdomen at close range by, and I'm not even going to try to say that
guy's name.
Who was an anarchist armed with a .32 caliber revolver that was concealed underneath a handkerchief.
Oh, that was under handkerchief. But I think Garfield was the one. Maybe I'm getting confused.
Members of the crowd started by James Benjamin Parker subdued and captured the man. And then the police intervened and beat him so severely it was initially thought he might not live to stand trial.
Yeah. Guteau was the guy who killed Garfield. Anyway, we don't have to talk about that. But except that I call myself a presidential history buff, but then I get them all mixed up because there were so many of them.
You're right.
Okay. So, anyway, I'm an idiot.
So 2 Puerto Rican nationalists attempted to take the president's life while he was staying at the Blair House, which is a guest. That's where guests of the president stay.
Yeah.
But the White House was being renovated, so the Trumans were staying there at the time.
Now, Artstar, aren't you from near? You're not from D.C., are you?
I'm from Baltimore.
You're from Baltimore, which is close.
Right.
But for some reason, I was thinking you spent a lot of time in D.C., but you're a Washington.
I went to school in D.C.
Oh, you did?
I went to school in D.C. Like, literally where I went to school at is right across the street from the Ellipsis, like behind the White House.
Oh,
wow,
okay.
that's cool.
So I used to spend a lot of time down in D.C. Like, when we talk about my thing, like, I think I'm going to throw in some of that.
Oh, okay. So are you familiar with this house? This house that this happened at? What's it called?
The Blair House.
I am, but I don't quite know where it's at.
Okay.
I think so. Like, I think the vice president now is supposed to be staying at Blair House.
Oh, that could be.
Is that right?
That could be.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know. Vice president, our first female vice president ever. I understand she's got to stay somewhere else because it's being where Pence was is being fixed. Wherever the vice president normally stays,
Fumigated.
there's some like renovating.
I feel like I read that she would be staying at Blair House.
Yeah. So the day before the attempt, Oscar Collazo and Griselio Torrensola boarded a train to Washington from the Bronx in New York.
Okay.
They carried with them 2 pistols and the goal of bringing national attention to the cause of the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, or the PRNP.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about that last episode, just about that because Puerto Rico was a U.S. territory.
Right.
And so I was like, do I keep this in or not? But there was a lot of
There's a lot of issue because they
freedom
were this
liberation.
This Nationalist Party was founded in 1922.
Okay.
And it had lobbied for Puerto Rican independence from the United States.
Okay.
And it had lobbied like passively and violently.
Right.
And by 1950, the party's president, who's a really charismatic guy, he was Harvard educated. His name was Pedro Albizu Campos. He orchestrated a series of armed uprisings against U.S. military attachés on October 30th, 1950, in 6 Puerto Rican towns.
Oh, on October 30th, 1950, the same night that Lights Out was on NBC. Lights Out was an extremely popular American old-time radio program, an early example of a network series devoted mostly to horror and the supernatural, predating Suspense and Inner Sanctum. Versions of Lights Out aired on different networks at various times, and then the series eventually made the transition to television. And this episode on October 30th, 1950, had an odd professor who claimed he could spot Martians who masquerade as humans using a pair of infrared glasses he wears. Only then could you see the third eyeball in the middle of their forehead.
Can you imagine him walking around?
They Live?
Yeah, like They Live is exactly what I thought of, with Rowdy Piper, one of the greatest actors in American history. Thanks, Artstar.
Thank you, Art. Yes, I finally got somebody who knows my pain. Yeah. You feel my pain, don't you?
I think Art might be. Are you a wrestling fan, Artstar? We never talked about that.
I dabble.
Okay.
I used to when I was younger. Like I just got back into like kind of sort of watching it. Okay. I always just say it's like a male-oriented soap opera.
Yeah,
yes,
you can almost tell what's going to happen before it happens.
Yeah,
yes,
that's it.
So it totally is.
You know.
It is, yeah.
So imagine what happened in our capital on the 6th, happening in 6 different towns at the same time.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
Yeah.
So the nationalist assault culminated with the attempted assassination of Harry Truman by Collazo and Torrensola, both. Oh, I already said that. They were activists in the New York chapter of the party.
The New York chapter of that party.
Right.
Okay.
So it is believed that they made the decision. Oh, and I got my stuff from pieces of history from the National Archives.
Okay, pieces of history?
Yes, and Wikipedia as well.
Okay.
So it is believed that they made the decision to assassinate Truman and to face certain death at the hands of the Secret Service after hearing reports about U.S. military reprisals against nationalists in Torrensola's hometown of Yayuya, Puerto Rico, on October 31st, 1950.
Oh, on October 31st, 1950, the same night that Danger was on, which was a live psychological and murder mystery drama, and one of the first U.S. television dramas to make effective use of background music.
Really?
Boom. History. TV history.
Very cool. Torrensola, who was an experienced gunman, he had acquired a P-38 and a German Luger.
Oh.
He had to teach Collazo, though, how to use it before departing New York because he didn't have very much experience with guns.
Okay.
Which is going to come back, kind of bite him later.
Oh, to haunt him.
So the two would-be assassins awoke in a run-down hotel near Capitol Hill on November 1st. They put on their new chalk-striped suits, stuffed the pistols into their waistbands, and did what any first-time visitors to D.C. do. They went sightseeing.
Okay.
So they spent the morning touring the U.S. Capitol building.
All right, the Capitol building that we all saw several images of on January 6th.
That's right. Then they hailed a taxi and told the cabbie to take them to the president's residence at the White House.
The president's residence. Sounds like we could write a rap song.
Well, that's what, Jane Elliott, one of my favorite people, Jane Elliott, says that we should rename the White House the president's residence because it shouldn't be a White House.
Yeah. Was it named White House?
It's really basic. It's really basic. Like if it was red, would we always have called it? Been calling it like the Red House? It's like,
that's how I was wondering.
It's one of those things.
Just the color, or is it because of racism that it's white?
I don't know. I can't imagine it doesn't have.
But if it wasn't white, here's my only argument talking about rap again is we wouldn't have all the kick-ass rap lyrics where they talk about painting the White House black.
Yeah,
paint them right.
Yeah.
That's true.
But then they probably come up with something else.
Yeah.
So like it wouldn't have mattered then because it would have been always been whatever color it was other than white.
I think MC Breed is the rap song I think of.
Yeah, MC Breed.
If I wasn't, but in hindsight, I wish Obama would have painted. Wouldn't it be cool if Obama would have painted it black? Those Republicans would have been so mad.
God, people would have lost their mind.
Did you have to I wonder if they have to do some sort of thing with Congress to ask for permission to actually paint the White House?
Yeah, who knows what
I want to paint it this color.
Painting it at all.
And have us vote on it.
Oh yeah, even a fresh coat of the same color would probably.
Yeah.
And I even what is it? Is it eggshell white or what is is it? Who knows? But
probably
that's funny.
Cracker white.
Saltine cracker white. I don't know.
But he was not, in fact, living at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Okay.
So he wasn't there. So an hour before, Harry Truman had crossed Jackson Place to have lunch with First Lady Bess. For almost 2 years, the Trumans had been living in the Blair House.
Okay.
They would spend the vast
2 years they were there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They would spend the vast majority of President Truman's second term there.
Oh, because they were renovating. They were just renovating the White House, right?
And there was pictures online, and it was just gutted.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about it.
They were probably putting in plumbing or they probably had plumbing, but maybe they were putting in stuff
like updating everything
that was new in the 1950 microwaves or whatever.
This just makes me think of something somebody said last week about Joe Biden moving into Trump's house, and somebody said, "Think about poor Joe Biden. Could you sleep in a room where Donald Trump farted?"
Ugh. Ugh. I know.
You sure you didn't say that, Joe?
I didn't say it. I heard. I would take credit if I would come up with that, but I can't remember who wrote that. But I mean, just think about it. That guy eats nothing but fast food, like a 75-year-old man that eats nothing but McDonald's and KFC. Like he farts all the time.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, go ahead.
Around 2 p.m., President Truman retired to his suite on the second floor of the Blair House for his customary afternoon nap.
Okay.
Approximately 15 minutes into Truman's nap, Collazo and Torrenzola exited their cab at 15th Street.
Okay.
They strolled past and surveyed the front of Blair House. There were 4 men outside the building's front door, which stood behind 2 guard booths. So you had the guard booths first, and then the 4 men were right by the door.
So at this point in history, now we kind of touched on it a little bit, like in the older days, they didn't even have any security. Now, of course, by the 50s, they have security. They know people want to kill the president.
Yeah. So Collazo, who was not much of a shot, because remember, he didn't have a lot of experience with firearms.
Oh, right, yeah.
He sneaked up behind White House police officer Donald Birdsall and pulled the trigger. But owing to his inexperience with firearms, the gun didn't fire but snapped real noisily.
Really?
So it took a second pull at the trigger to successfully land a bullet in Birdsall's right knee.
Huh.
The gunshot alerted members of the Secret Service then, who ran out of the house and started shooting, and they fired bullets into his chest as he was climbing the steps of Blair House.
Oh boy, got him.
He became incapacitated.
Okay.
Then, while all this is going on, right, Torrenzola ran across the eastern edge of the building and he ambushed White House policeman Leslie Kofelt.
Okay.
And he had the Luger. And so he got that out. He lodged 3 bullets in Kofelt's torso.
Oh, and this is a Capitol Police officer, right?
This is
the D.C. Capitol Police, isn't it?
White House police officer. So Kofelt would shortly become the first and only member of the Secret Service to die protecting the president from an assassination attempt. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yep, that's it. This is it. That's him.
Wow.
After emptying the rest of his clip into 2 other guards, Torrenzola stood by to reload. Okay. Less than 30 seconds into the longest gun battle in Secret Service history, President Truman, all of a sudden he pops his head out of the second-story window to see what's all this commotion.
What the hell's going on out here?
What's going on out here?
I'm trying to take my nap.
And so Secret Service starts saying, get back, get back in there.
Oh, they had a clear shot at him.
And had they not told him to get down, and Torrenzola had to reload at the moment.
Oh, really?
He could have killed him.
Wow.
So the mortally wounded Kofelt, right, who got shot in the torso,
right,
he wasn't done yet though. So he
wasn't dead.
He wasn't dead yet.
Just incapacitated.
His final burst of energy.
Yeah.
He leveled his pistol at Torrenzola's temple and squeezed, and he was killed instantly.
Oh, the guard. You were talking about the guard wasn't dead.
Yes.
The guard did that. I was thinking the other accomplice guy. Sorry.
So the guard.
So he saved.
He killed him. I was thinking, wait, did he kill his friend?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But you're talking about.
I was thinking at first they were saying he was killed his friend.
I thought you were talking about the first guy. You're talking about the
guard.
The guard
that was shot.
Yeah.
By
Torrenzola.
Yeah, he in the last burst of energy shot him in the temple.
Before he died, the last thing he did was shoot the guy and save. So he's a hero.
Him. Yes, he is.
Okay, sorry, I was confused by names.
Yes, that's okay. That happens.
Art was with me. He was confused too.
Yeah, well,
it's probably my fault. I was
incapacitated
because I was talking about the other guy. So sorry.
So Torrenzola was killed instantly.
Okay.
And the plot to kill Truman was thwarted. Kofelt would go down in Secret Service history as a hero, of course, for that.
Yeah, it's Kofelt. What was the name of the guy that was with Torrenzola?
Collazo.
Now Collazo lived, right? He was
incapacitated.
Incapacitated.
He did live. So
they put him away.
Well, let me get there.
Okay, I'll let you get there.
All right. The entire exchange lasted for less than 1 minute.
Really? All that happened in less than 1 minute?
But this episode would have lasting ramifications for presidential security procedure.
Yeah, I bet.
In 1951, in the wake of the assassination attempt, Congress passed legislation that increased the purview of the Secret Service's protection to include the president, his family, the president-elect, and the vice president.
Yeah.
The attempt on Truman's life was the event that created the modern Secret Service as we know it today. In 1952...
You know what, I was thinking about that with the Secret Service now that the vice president gets it for life, or I don't know if it's for life, but the president, all the former presidents, like the better we are with healthcare and everything, where more people survive longer.
Yeah.
It's got to get more expensive. Like, they're probably like, Jimmy Carter's still fucking alive? How's this guy alive?
Yeah, really.
Like, he's got to have security, like Secret Service all the time. Like, all these guys, the more presidents we have, do the vice presidents get it for life? Does like Pence?
Yeah,
does Pence
pretty
have
much.
it?
I would think.
I think they all do, right?
I would think once you're out of service, while you would have Secret Service, you wouldn't have as many as a sitting president.
I wouldn't
So
say
you might have,
Maybe-
let's say,
Might be one guy.
like let's say as a 24-hour period, you might have like three. You might just have three Secret Service guys. Because
Yeah.
I mean, like, what are you doing other than going from here doing appearances? So.
Well, Jimmy Carter's building houses at 100 million years old.
Yeah.
But like, does Dan Quayle?
Right.
Does he still have it?
I don't know.
Like, is Dan Quayle even alive? Like,
He
I
is.
don't know. So I maybe wonder.
So, in 1952,
Yeah.
a week before his scheduled execution, Truman commuted Collazo's death sentence to life imprisonment.
Okay, he saved him.
Yep.
Now,
Firmly believing that he was never in danger, Truman expressed that the thing he hated most about the case was that 3 young men, one of them killed and 2 of them badly wounded, had ended up as casualties. He was the opinion that it was all so unnecessary for a thing like that to have happened. That's what he said.
huh?
President Jimmy Carter later commuted Collazo's sentence to time served. Collazo died in Puerto Rico in 1994.
So that's what I was confused about. I'm surprised that somebody who attempted to kill the president was not only saved from the death penalty, but he was released.
Yeah.
Ever. Like,
Right.
Jimmy Carter let him go. And so I asked my mom the other day just to see
Well,
if she
I think that
remembered, like,
USA, there's some culpability that we have with Puerto Rico. I think there's some kind of wrongdoing on our side.
yeah, like maybe they were responding to something we were doing.
That was right. That was
that was
real.
bad. And I mean, I did look into this a little because I was going to cover this before you decided to do it. And the only thing I kind of saw was that the Collazo, is that the guy's name? Collazo. He said something like, we had nothing against Harry Truman. Like, the
It
president.
was just to get
Yeah,
attention.
it wasn't him. It was just the symbol that the president is. Like,
Right.
he didn't do something specifically. We didn't hate him or want to kill him. It was just we wanted attention
Right.
to say, hey, Puerto Rico needs to be free or whatever it is. So, I also wonder, like, is there a liberation movement to this day? Like, do they want to be more free? I mean, I think we treat them more as like a state rather than.
Well, we
something
should,
we own,
They don't
but-
get to vote, though.
Yeah, that's true. And we don't help them when there's a hurricane.
Right.
So, yeah.
So
Right.
it's like they should vote and be able to figure out whether they want to be a state or whether they want to be their own country.
Well, I hope we help them.
I do too. So anyway, that was the assassination of Harry Truman.
Well, good. That was
Or the
interesting.
attempted assassination.
That was
of
good stuff. That was interesting. Yes, history. I didn't know a lot of that. So we'll jump right into the rest of the year since we got a lot to cover, and Art's got something cool, and we'll see. So November 3rd, 1950 was a Friday, and on that day, this isn't in America, but I had to share this because this is crazy. A 1-inch long earwig
Ew.
was the indirect cause of sinking 3 commercial motor ships.
What?
On November 3rd, 1950, the tiny insect had blocked the natural gas supply and then extinguished a light in a lighthouse at Denmark's Grundsand Strait between the island of Falster and the islands of Moon and Bowie.
You're really nailing these.
That's actually how
pronunciations.
I actually looked them up on
Totally.
YouTube. That's how you say them. Moon, because both Moon and Bowie have a
God.
letter in them that I've never seen before. It's like a O, but it's got a line through it.
Yeah.
So I looked up online and I ended up watching a
Probably the rabbit
whole
hole.
movie in Dutch, in the Dutch language, just to see if they'd say that word. But it's Moon and Bowie. And Bowie is spelled B-O-G.
And you
with
say
that
it like
circle and
that?
a line through it. Bowie? That's how they say it, yeah. But it's spelled B-O-G-O with a line through it. And that's pronounced Bowie. So that's weird. Anyway, during the 75 minutes before the light could be restored, 4 ships ran aground and 3 of them sank after their crews escaped, all because of an earwig.
My God.
Isn't that crazy?
I wonder if they had any like safety rules come out of that incident where they were like, we gotta make sure there's no earwigs.
You
in
probably
there
have
now.
to spray for earwigs now.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy. And then on Saturday, November.
Pesky earwigs.
What? What's that?
I said those pesky earwigs.
Yeah. No.
Sorry.
COVID.
I got it like something stuck in my throat. Earwigs are gross.
Oh,
man.
they're so gross.
Ugh, they are disgusting.
Earwigs and centipedes. Ugh.
Yeah. Anyway, Saturday, November 4th, 1950, Grover Cleveland Alexander died.
Oh.
You know who Grover Cleveland Alexander is?
No.
Art, do you know who Grover Cleveland Alexander is?
I know you call yourself Grover Cleveland Steamer, but I was thinking that
I did. So I asked my buddy who's a big baseball fan too. He doesn't know, but he was 63 years old when he passed away in 1950. He was an American baseball pitcher who had led the National League in games won, strikeouts thrown, lowest ERA, batting average, home runs hit, and home runs batted during the 1915 and 1916 seasons. So it was a long, long time ago.
And his parents really loved Grover.
They must have loved Grover Cleveland.
Yes.
Who I guess I just saw on Twitter, Andy posted something from Nerd Skool that Grover Cleveland apparently was a horrible rapist and raped some woman.
God.
That came out, later. They just uncovered it or something. But Grover Cleveland Alexander, just because of that name, I had to look him up a little bit. And he had been drafted into the Army 1 month before he was shipping out to the Army. He married his wife in a courthouse ceremony. And then they divorced in 1929, and they remarried in 1931, and then divorced again in 1941.
Oh, my God.
But he spent most of the 1918 season in France as a sergeant with 342nd Field Artillery. Mm-hmm. And while he was serving in France, this is like in the middle of his baseball career, he had to go serve. He was exposed to German mustard gas, and a shell exploded near him, causing partial hearing loss and triggering the onset of epilepsy. And then following his return from the war, he suffered from shell shock and was plagued with epileptic seizures, which only exacerbated his drinking problem.
Good night.
And so people often misinterpreted his seizure-related problems as drunkenness, but he also hit the bottle particularly hard as a result of all this emotional trauma and the physical trauma, and it plagued him for the rest of his life.
That's an uplifting story.
That's an uplifting story about Grover Cleveland Alexander, if you didn't know about him. And then Sunday, November 5th, 1950, automobile racer Phil Hill had a difficult beginning at the Pebble Beach Cup when his Jaguar XK120 stalled at the start of the race. But despite starting in last place, say that 10 times fast, 100 yards behind the rest of the group, he passed 2 cars on the first lap and gradually increased his position over the remaining 48 miles and won the event in an unusual last-to-first comeback.
Okay.
According to Cruel Sport, a book by Robert Daly, Hill was described as a thoughtful gentleman and once said, "I'm in the wrong business. I don't want to beat anybody. I don't want to be the big hero. I'm a peace-loving man," basically. I just kept that quote in there for some reason. And I'm going to jump to Tuesday, November 7th, 1950. I'm only keeping this in here because I had no idea any of these people. This fascinates me. You guys might be bored. I might cut it out later, but in midterm congressional elections this year, the Democratic Party retained its majority but lost 28 seats in the House of Representatives and 5 in the Senate. In the closest race, incumbent Democrat William Benton narrowly defeated Republican investment banker Prescott Bush, the father of future U.S. President George H.W. Bush, as U.S. Senator for Connecticut. Notably, a U.S. Representative and future U.S. President Richard M. Nixon became one of California's U.S. Senators by defeating Helen Gahagan Douglas. James Roosevelt, the son of the late President Franklin D. Roosevelt, failed in a challenge against the incumbent Republican governor of California and future U.S. Chief Justice Earl Warren. So I just didn't know all those people ran against each other or knew each other or were what they were before they were what they were.
Yeah.
So I just kept that in there because that's interesting.
Yeah.
Did this interest you because of your love of presidential history?
I think so. And because, like, lately I've been just paying attention. You know, we've been paying attention with like just what happened with the recent election where we now have a tie. The Senate tie is 50-50 with Vice President Harris, the vote. You know, I'm completely ignorant of history and who had the majorities and minorities and when and where. And like Amy and I just recently over these past few episodes started becoming more aware of like the shift in the Democratic Party when they went from being conservative to liberal, and like the Republican Party switched because Lincoln was a liberal. Yeah, he was a Republican, but they were liberal then, and then they became conservative.
It's just one of those weird, like the congressional part of the parties themselves have always been kind of this weird thing. Like there are people, especially in the black community, who always talk about black people shouldn't be Republicans. And then if you really look at things in history, back in the day, in the time before, the Republicans were the one who was all about freeing slaves.
Yeah.
Right.
So the Democrats were the racist ones. Right.
The Democrats, for some reason, people, not even just in general, people in general have this feeling that it's one or the other. Like if you're a Republican, you're quote unquote almost automatically bad, and if you're Democratic, you're good. Like, but then they don't see the whole bipartisan kind of thing. It's just like always like you either vote for Republican or you vote for a Democrat. If you vote for Republican, you must have money. That's the only reason you vote for Republican. It's like,
or you're religious.
It's weird that we think that way.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of is the way they've become, and they sell you on that. They try to sell you. You have to pick one side. If you go to church, if you're church, you're a Republican. If you're white, you know, if you're sometimes, like you said, white and black, or it's gay or straight. Gays are Democrats. But that's why. But there's Democrat and Republican. There's liberal and conservative, and they've switched parties, and that's why I always refuse. That's why I won't pick a party. Like I'm not a registered anything, because
I'm independent.
If they switch again, they can switch again. Like somebody crazy could take over a party.
Exactly.
Look at Trump taking over the. I mean, they can switch if they
crash and burn right now.
If they've switched just since the 40s and 50s, like they can switch again. And then once you're registered, like I don't know how hard it is to deregister. I have no idea. So that's why I won't stick to a party. Like, and I don't think they should have two parties anyway. That's a whole other thing. They should have like 35 parties.
Right.
Because
we could get into that whole thing.
Yeah, because everybody's really in the middle. Like nobody's crazy. Anyway, we won't get into that whole thing because people get mad. But I'm going to jump to Friday, November 10th, 1950, when a U.S. Air Force B-50 Super Fortress bomber experienced an in-flight emergency, and it jettisoned and detonated a Mark IV nuclear bomb at 2,500 feet above the St. Lawrence River near St. Andre, Quebec, I guess is how they say it. Slightly before 4 p.m., the explosion rocked the town and caused a thick cloud of yellow smoke. And the plutonium core had been removed before transport, so the blast was limited to a conventional chemical explosion. So it wasn't nuclear.
Oh, my God, thank God.
It didn't destroy anything, but 100 pounds of uranium were scattered in the river, and the weapon was never recovered. So I looked into this, and I was like, geez, was Canada pissed at us? But they weren't, because the incident was immediately covered up at the time.
Oh, wow.
It didn't come out till the 1980s that this happened. The Air Force admitted it. So.
Oh, wow.
So, and there's no good. I looked up. There's not a lot of evidence of any cancer clusters or anything in that area, but you kind of wonder if that happened, if that was covered up too. But that's
insane.
That's awful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No wonder Canadians. We've had two Canadians on our podcast. They probably hate us.
Yeah.
One of them told me to make her some cookies, bitch.
All right.
Make me some cookies, bitch. She didn't tell me that, but all right. Anyway, that same day, the Interstate Commerce Commission ordered the end of racial segregation in the dining cars of trains that traveled interstate routes, effective December 15th. In response, the Southern Railway said that it ceased the practice 4 months earlier, on July 1st, and the Louisville and Nashville Railroad had discontinued the practice of barring black passengers from sitting in dining cars previously reserved for white travelers. And the Atlantic Coastline Railroad, however, said that it would wait until the order was received and studied by its legal department. So
they wouldn't do it?
They wouldn't do it until they could
look
into it, because they were assholes. Just remind you of all of, like, we talked about this several times. Like, just everything was race. Everything in America is racist and has a history of racism.
That's
like
right.
pretty much. Like anything you think of. And in some ways we're lucky that we don't even have to think about those kind of things, but
It's privilege.
but it's it's privilege is that, yeah. And that same day, Cowboy Bob Orton was born in Kansas City, Kansas. Was that one of your favorite wrestlers, Artstar? Cowboy Bob Orton, remember him?
Nah.
No, he's Randy Orton's father.
I was into Randy Orton. I was more of a Funk Family and Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, baby. American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, baby. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Sorry, you don't know him. Anyway, Amy gets mad about wrestling. Saturday, November 11th, 1950. Okay, this one I fell down another rabbit hole. The Mattachine Society.
It was a lesbian group.
Am I saying it right? Gay and lesbians?
Yeah.
It was basically the first gay rights group in America. It was founded in Los Angeles. It was the first gay liberation organization. The organizational meeting took place at the home of Harry Hay at 2328 Cove Avenue, with Rudy Gernreich, Bob Hull, Chuck Rowland, and Dale Jennings completing the gathering. And Harry Hay was also the co-founder of the Radical Fairies, a loosely affiliated gay spiritual movement. So I told you last episode, and I never finished my thought. I was listening back and editing. Like sometimes I had a couple beers last week, so I wasn't making a lot of sense. I listened back, but I was talking about how like gay rights people, like gays in the 50s, fascinate me, and I meant to say I wasn't trying to insinuate that they didn't,
That nobody cared.
that nobody
they were gay.
they didn't have to fight against homophobia. I meant to say it fascinates me because it was so hidden and scary, and they had to do. You think about farther back. I mean, it's been hard for gays the last 40 years. Imagine how bad it was in the 50s and the 40s and the 30s. Like, there were gay people then. They just couldn't say anything. Anyway, so this guy I looked into, just like this fascinates me. He started this in 1950, a gay right. I'm like, he had to be pretty bold. And I was so excited about this guy. I was like, man, this guy's a hero. And he came to be viewed as an elder statesman within the gay community. He was regularly invited to give speeches to LGBT activists and student groups. He was a featured speaker at the San Francisco Gay Pride Parade 1982, Grand Marshal of the Long Beach Gay Pride Parade 1986. But then I found a part that's not so great because he remained highly critical of the mainstream gay rights movement because he took a controversial and at times decisive positions, including his consistent support of the North American Man-Boy Love Association, NAMBLA. He wanted them included in pride parades.
Oh God!
And so looking at this, I was like, "What?" Like number one, I really thought for a long time when NAMBLA was always a joke on South Park
wasn't real.
and stuff, and Jon Stewart. I always thought it was kind of not real. I thought it was a joke, and so I looked into it because why would this guy support it? And I think from
he
what
thinks it's a sexual orientation.
Well, no, I think from what he read, what he's saying. I don't think he's talking about little boys. I don't think he's talking about
High school kids.
Well, yeah, his whole thing was that he said if the parents and friends of gays are truly friends of gays, they would know from their gay kids that the relationship with an older man is precisely what 13, 14, and 15-year-old kids need.
That's too young.
More than anything else in the world, as well as highlighting his own relationship with an adult man when he was 14. I send to all of you my love and deep affection for what you offer to the boys in honor of this boy when he was 14. And when he needed to know, best of all, what only another gay man could show him and tell him. So I think I'm not saying I agree with him or anything, but I think there is a thing in the gay community about the big daddy, the daddy thing. I always thought it was like a 20-year-old man and a 50-year-old man or whatever.
Probably usually it is.
And I've seen a lot of guys in relationships like that, and that's okay. But I think he was apparently when he was 14, he had somebody. But you think about a guy in 1950 who was gay, can't tell anybody, doesn't understand it. You can't learn about it anywhere because you're told you're wrong. It's a secret. You're bad or whatever. And so in that time, as a 14-year-old, he found a grown man that would help him understand himself. But it's still pedophilia, so it's a horrible. I'm not defending it.
How old was he in 1950? How old was he in 1950? Was he already an older man, or?
Yeah, I think it was an older man. Let's see, he died in.
Because I was gonna say, That used to be a time where
Just say you don't know.
young people were still considered adults already. Sometimes, like you have like some family giving their daughter to some other family, and their daughter's like 14. But as long as she's able to bear a child,
that's
she's
true.
a woman. So maybe in his
that's how it was in
weird
older days.
mind. Yeah.
So he was born in 1912. So in 1950, he was in his 40s.
38,
right?
48,
Almost 40,
38.
Yeah.
Well, and like you're saying, that
He should know.
men and women have done that for years. Like 14-year-old girls have been married to older men.
Right.
So it's not any different. It's just
you're right.
Both things are wrong.
Yeah, nobody would look at that as pedophilia, even though it is. I mean, people do now. But also, 1912, life expectancy was different. Like, I looked back. I was doing an ancestry thing and traced my family back, and like somewhere way back in the 14 and 1500s, I have ancestors that married like the man was 17 and the wife was 40, or the woman was 45.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's like, but I think that was more normal because and then I found incest way back then. It was like, they're like cousins and stuff. But that was what people did in the 1400s and 1500s and stuff. Like, it was weird. Not saying that's okay, but we've evolved, obviously. But yeah, I'm not saying I'm not a NAMBLA advocate or anything, but you can kind of understand like what I try to understand everybody who's different or weird. But I mean, I can't fathom being told my sexual preference is wrong and I'm a bad person and don't talk to anybody about it. And
or deviant.
Yeah. And everybody develops different. Like, some people are sexually active at 15 and 16, and some people, when they're 15 and 16, they look like they're 8, so I don't know. But that was a weird thing that I fell down a thing of, and I was just like, ugh, oh my God, what? So, anyway. Yeah.
Moving on.
Moving on quickly from that. Let's jump to, let's cleanse our palate. Hopefully the next thing will cleanse our palate. November 14th, 1950 was a Tuesday. Jack Mullen, working on an investment by Ampex and Bing Crosby Enterprises, filed the first patent for a videotape recorder. And the patent wasn't issued till 57, but I can't believe they were even thinking about that in 1950.
Yeah,
but they were.
Early.
Yeah. And that same day, carbon-14 dating of the Dead Sea Scrolls began when Carl H. Kraling sent a cloth from the Cave 1 scroll wrapper and was delivered to Dr. Willard Libby at the University of Chicago. Libby would conclude that the wrapper had been made no earlier than 160 BC and no later than 390 AD. So I fell down another rabbit hole with the Dead Sea Scrolls because I'm not a religious guy. Art, are you into religion a lot? A big Bible guy?
I'm not a big. I mean, when growing up, I was, but I'm not like right now. I'm not.
So the Dead Sea Scrolls, I couldn't find a lot. I asked AIM while I was researching this. I was like, "Is this something everybody knows about but me? Like, is it?" I tried to find. Is it proof of anything? Like, is it? Like, do they consider the Dead Sea Scrolls like proof of Jesus or anything? And I don't know if you guys know.
No.
I don't know. Because, like, I mean, even growing up as a kid, I can't ever recall being in church and we would, talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just like there's other parts of the Bible that didn't make it into the King James version that exist that I think it was the apothecaries or something like that, where people don't really, go by in churches. So it's like, is it? Or I guess it's one of those. Religion is a tricky subject.
It really is.
It's a tricky subject to talk to people about.
Yeah, it's like so. I'm I didn't grow up going to church much at all. I don't know anything. I went to Sunday school when I was real little, but so I'm really dumb when it comes to like Shroud of Turin and
I used to offend
things like that.
I grew up in church. I grew up going to church, and then once I turned 18, it's one of those things where you start questioning certain things.
Yeah.
But I used to actually offend friends when I would sit there and say that, like, the King James version of the Bible has really good stories in it. Yeah. And then they would get highly offended because it's like, Mm-hmm. But then it's like when you start asking questions like, okay, so was Jesus around, like, where did the dinosaurs come in at?
Yeah.
Like, what part did the dinosaurs exist? So, like, and then, like, what happened to the cavemen? Like, were the cavemen around? So it's like all of these It's like, how do you believe one thing, you don't believe another thing?
Right.
The whole, like, you believe in something that you can't see, but when someone mentions aliens, you think they're crazy.
Yeah.
So
Right.
religion is one of those things that you'll never really win an argument over.
Yeah, it really is.
It's true.
It really is difficult. We don't talk about it a lot because Amy and I aren't real, but it doesn't mean we, there are we have friends that are very religious. I don't want to discount that,
Right.
But I think part of it is that
You should never ever knock anyone's beliefs. But then it's one of those things where, like, a lot of times you have people who they get so ingrained in their religion that
Well, they try to
anybody
push
else
it on other
believes.
people.
that's where I don't like. Is
Right,
people
exactly.
that either side pushing
Right.
it. Like if somebody who doesn't believe say you shouldn't believe, you're a jerk. That's bad. But if you push yours on me too, but yeah, because it's all hard. But I think from what I've surmised, from what I've looked online, is what it proves more than anything is just that people have believed. It's like a lot of the stories in the Sea Scrolls are the same stories from the Bible. So it's like finding a really, really old Bible, kind of thing.
Okay.
So it was like,
Okay.
but so as far as I know, I don't think it really proves anything except that it's just amazing they found these old texts. And there was like several caves and several pieces of it together. Who knows what it was? But I think, because I always wonder, like, they could just be stories. Like, I'm always fascinated with, like, I always tell my son, it's like, they could be real. It could all be real, or it could all be,
Right.
it all could be like
parable,
Star Wars.
or
Like,
parables.
what if thousands of years from now, some people find our civilization, they find a Star Wars DVD and they watch it like, oh my God, this must be real. We should start worshiping Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader's Satan. And, what if, and then if we knew they were doing that, we're like, that's a fucking movie, you idiots. But,
Right.
like,
Right.
or it could be real. Who knows? But yeah, I think sometimes I think it could be anything. We'll probably never know.
Right.
We just
Or
gotta-
Star Wars could have spun out your exact same theory.
Yeah, it could be like Star Wars. That's what I keep telling them. It's like, imagine if our civilization is wiped out for billions of years. Some aliens land here and they find one movie and it's just Star Wars and they find nothing else, which could happen. There's so many copies and it's everywhere. Right. And think about this, like, people believe more in the Bible and stuff because you find relics and you find crosses, whatever. Like, think of all the images of Darth Vader that you'll find, or of lightsabers. Like, everybody had a lightsaber in their house. They had a Luke Skywalker poster. Like, this must be a religion. And it's like, no. What if they came back and was like, no, the Bible's it's our science fiction.
Right.
Maybe not. Somebody's gonna kill me. I'm gonna get struck by lightning just saying that, probably.
Right.
Okay, and that I'll jump to November 18th. This is my favorite story. November 18th, 1950 is on a Saturday. And Art, I think you and I have similar type stories. But this one, I couldn't find a whole lot on it, but just this story is amazing. So, according to the Chicago Daily Tribune, a bus driver saved 33 Western State College football players from injury and death after the brakes failed on their bus when they were traveling downhill through Monarch Pass in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, wow.
The team was on its way from Gunnison, Colorado to Cannon City for a game against Adams State College when the air pressure failed in the college-owned bus and the gear shift moved out of second gear into neutral.
Oh, shit.
Even worse, the gear shift broke when head coach Joe Thomas was trying to put the bus back in gear, and the emergency handbrake didn't slow the speed. So for the next 17 minutes, think about this, 17 minutes.
That's a long time.
Driver Jerry Tobin steered the vehicle around 23 miles of hairpin curves at speeds of up to 110 miles an hour.
Oh my God.
It's just falling.
Can you imagine how much that guy was sweating?
Oh my God, 110 miles with a bus full of kids and they passed one car while avoiding an oncoming vehicle.
Oh my God.
Before bringing it to a stop at Salida. The players assisted by shifting from one side of the bus to the other at Tobin's direction. Like, he would tell the players,
oh my God.
I'm in a bus full of football players.
Yeah.
Despite the near-fatal experience, the Western State Mountaineers beat the Adams State Grizzlies
they went on to
35-14. Yeah, they played and they won.
Oh my God. That's
Can you
crazy.
imagine for 17 minutes going downhill without brakes, like
no.
on a bus?
In the mountains.
Right.
We go through the mountains all the time, going back up to Ohio and back, and I'm scared I have brakes. I never lose control, and I'm like white knuckling it.
And those aren't the Rocky Mountains either.
No, I think I read somewhere wasn't like the students on the bus moved from side to side.
Yeah, that's
kind of like
that's what I said.
Control it.
He said the players assisted by shifting from one side of the bus to the other when Tobin would tell him, he's okay, guys, go to the other side now because we're making another turn.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And a bus in 1950.
That sounds almost superhuman.
Oh my God! Can you imagine? There had to be pants full of shit.
Oh yeah.
Like everybody would have shitty
Right.
pants. Mm-hmm. And you're on a mountain, 100
Pissing
miles
on
an hour.
themselves, just
I don't know
Right.
if everybody shits their pants when they're scared.
I'm
That's just
shitting
you.
my pants right now talking about
It's
it.
just you.
Art, do you have a pants? Are your pants full of shit right now? Just talking about it?
no.
Just me?
But when I did read the story, I was like, that I would have been freaking out.
Yeah.
Like it'd probably been one of those like you can't speak freak out. You know, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
lost your voice. Just like
Oh my
oh god,
God.
oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh
Just
god.
like
Yeah.
sweating and.
You
Of
feel
course
like
they won that game because they're like, we ain't going through that for nothing.
Right.
Like, what if they got their asses handed to them after that? Like, jeez. Oh my God, that's crazy. I never heard of that, and that's a cool story. And then I'm gonna jump to November. I don't know what this is. Here's speaking of religion again. Tuesday, November 21st, 1950. 21 missionaries of the Christian evangelical organization, the New Tribes Mission, and 3 crew members were on the first flight of their new DC-3 airplane when it crashed in a Mount Moran in the Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming.
ooh.
The flight came 4 months after another 15 people were killed in the June 9th crash of another DC-3 owned by that same mission.
Oh my God.
Everyone on board was killed, including founder Paul Fleming and 2 widows and 6 children of men who had been killed in the first crash. Nobody was able to reach the wreckage until the following summer, and some of the bodies have never been found. Wouldn't you kind of, if you were part of that mission, think
Maybe. Yeah.
maybe we are doing something wrong? Like
Yeah.
maybe somebody's selling us something, or maybe flights weren't just that good yet.
I think that's part of it.
Yeah, maybe. And that brings us to Wednesday, November 22nd, 1950, and the great Artstar has a story for us.
Woo.
What you got
Right.
for us, Art?
All right, so I'm going to be talking about the Kew Gardens train crash, which is
Oh.
also known as the Richmond Hill disaster, but not the Richmond Hill disaster of 2012, but the Richmond Hill disaster of 1950.
Wow.
So
Wow.
there was 2 different ones, so it was kind of
Sheesh.
weird.
There's 2.
But yeah.
Okay.
So, the Kew Gardens train crash was a collision between 2 trains on the Long Island Railroad's main line, which occurred during the evening rush hour of November 22nd, 1950. Like, the train left Pennsylvania Station at 6:09, and it was on its way to Jamaica Station.
Okay.
But, at that point, the train conductor went to stop the train, and the brakes caught. But then when he tried to release the brakes, they wouldn't release. So he sent the braker man out to check on it. All right.
Boy.
So and like this I got this from a book called The People's Almanac.
Okay.
All right. And this was like I guess published in 1975. So it says William W. Murphy, a 45-year veteran of railroading and just 4 years away from retirement, responded to the restricted signal on Sea Tower 2 miles before the train's first scheduled stop at Jamaica. With the signal changed to approach, Murphy resumed his 30-mile-per-hour speed. The next signal light on J, which is the Jamaica station,
Yeah.
showed restricted, and again, Murphy applied the air brakes. And this is when he applied the brakes and they wouldn't release.
Okay.
So he applied, they grabbed, and wouldn't release. The train that he was on had 12 cars. There was 1,000 passengers. It was a commuter train, and they were like I say, rush hour. People coming from work. People
Yep.
traveling for Thanksgiving, which was the next day.
Oh yeah. The
Right.
Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That's like the biggest
travel day of the year.
travel day ever. Oh my gosh.
So usually when that happens, they send out the brakeman to go to the tracks just in case there's another train coming. So he can be pretty much he's like a flagger.
Yeah, like hey.
So he has a red So he has a red lantern or whatever. Trying to make sure that the next train coming can see that there's a stalled train. Because once the train stops, the lights, usually when a train stops, sometimes the lights are cut out. Like I don't know back in those times.
Yeah.
But like I say, I used to go to school in DC, and I used to ride commuter trains 5 times a week.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And like there have been plenty of times I would be on the train where it stalled, and then just growing up seeing these horrible train accidents, I used to always think that I catch a train 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Like I've been on trains where the train before either stalled out or another train we had to bus between stations because some train derailed or something like that.
Oh
So
yeah.
it was always I wasn't fearful, but there was always that fear like when I get on the train, I wouldn't sit at the front of the train or the back of the train. Always sit in the center.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
all right, so like I say, the brakeman, he got off the train and he was out there while they were trying to work on the brakes.
Yeah.
Where I left off. Okay, so the brakeman, he started to get the flares to put behind the stalled train. Close behind the same mainline track, train 174, which was a different train with 12 cars and 1,200 passengers, was thundering towards Jamaica Station.
Oh.
And the conductor on that train, he saw the signal at Station C, which told him that he should decelerate because of something was up ahead on the previous track. Now, it was, this is 6 o'clock in November, so, it's pretty dark out. And, like, even now in certain rural areas, when it gets dark at night on trains, there's very little light.
Yeah.
So, they depend on these signal tracks a lot. So once he got to C track and he saw that he had to, it said restricted, he slowed down. But then up ahead, he could see up ahead the J signal. Mind you, the brakeman was still outside waiting for them to tell him that he can get back on the train because they were ready to go.
Yeah.
Oh.
The brakeman, he heard the train and he assumed that they was ready, so he got back on the train and he informed the conductor the engineman that he was back on the train. Never got a response to him. Did it again, he never got a response to him. So the train behind them never saw the red lights. And the only red lights they did have were on the back of the caboose of the other train, and they're like really small. He couldn't see those lights. So now this train, which was slowed down, sped back up to 35 miles per hour. And by the time he did see the train, it was too late for him to stop. Now, mind you, this train guy, he was about to retire. He was close to retiring.
Always
but
the day before retirement.
The day before retiring. And so what ends up happening is once they came up on the train, once he saw the train, it was too late to stop. And mind you, he was only going 35 miles per hour, but it's almost like a missile coming at 35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And you just, and like even just looking at some of the photos of this train, like I kind of I was trying to find something to see what the train was actually made out of.
Right.
But the way that they talk about the train, when the train crashed into the back of the other train, what they say is they said it telescoped it, which means it just literally went into the other train. Ooh. And I was watching on YouTube, I found a news clip of one of the survivors. He said like usually every day they catch this train there in the back of the train playing pinochle. And like 1 minute the train had stalled, and then next thing he knew it got really bright. The next thing he knew it was dark. And there were people smashed on top of each other.
Oh my God.
Like even if you look at the video footage of it, like it's something like even nowadays on television, the imagery that they showed, we wouldn't even see on television.
Yeah.
Right.
But like the train looked like a sardine can, and all you saw was bodies and limbs.
Oh my goodness.
Like it took, so it was one of those things that was like just watching it and listening and reading about it, all I kept thinking about it, like all the time I caught the train. Like I've actually caught a train going from Baltimore to Chicago where, we was slow, we was stalled. And most of those train tracks are owned by railroad companies. So this commuter train is a public transportation type thing. And usually when you're on those tracks, you have to give over to the railroad companies that own the track. So like you can only go but so fast.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because let's say if a freight train comes through, it takes precedence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this was a really bad incident because 77 people died, like 300 and some people got injured. Had it been like a freight train, like this train would have been totally eviscerated.
Obliterated.
But like even just the fact of, like I say, what happened to the people in the back of this train, like it blew my mind reading about this story. Like, I mean, it's like I can't even imagine. Then, like you said, it's the day before Thanksgiving. Some people was coming home from work. Some was, probably going to visit family, and it's like it's intense.
That's crazy.
And this was also like the second accident in like 9 months on this line.
Ooh.
Like back in February, whatever, they had another crash where like 50 something people died. Wow. But like, I found this on a site called. Oddly enough, the name of the site was Trains Are Fun. And then it's like Trains Are Fun /LIRR, right? But like pretty much since like the 1800s, this rail line had train accidents or whatever. Like basically because of incidents like this, it's what caused the MTA in New York to take over the Long Island Railroad. Oh, really? So like a lot of that commuter trains are now, and then also like the train in question, had been in operation for like 40 something years. Oh. Like it had issues with it before. Oh. And then like at the time they didn't know what was the cause of it. Yeah. But it was clearly, this brakeman, he got back on the train, he assumed everything was okay, even though usually the engineer would tell them whether or not, we're ready to go, whatever. Yeah. But he just assumed. And literally he tried to get back off the train once he didn't hear, but by this time, the other train was already up on him. And I was just like, even when you asked me what story I wanted to do when I read this, I was like, okay, this is a commuter train. I catch commuter train. I usually catch them all the time. Right. I got to do this one. Yeah. But then it's just like looking at it, like it's one of those things where it's like, if I was younger and I read this story, it would probably give me nightmares. Yeah, you probably wouldn't ever get on the train. I would get on, but even now, I always never get on. Even before I knew about this, whenever I caught the train, I always be like, I'm not going to get at the back, I'm not going to get at the front. Yeah. I'm like, even in planes, because of loss, I always try to make sure I don't want to sit at the back of the plane because, and I don't want to sit by the wing, but I'm not sitting by the front. So like you pick a spot kind of in between. Yeah. So
that's funny. I never thought about that because we used to live in Chicago, so we take the train to work all the time, or the subway train. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you talk about issues with trains is all the time. Like we're never on time. Like always, like lights go off. You get stuck in the subway. Yep. That's when everybody always you can always hear everybody audibly gasp when you lost power when you're in the subway because the lights are so dark. Yeah. And people are always, oh no.
Well, and you're sardined together. It was like
because if a train comes and you're stuck underground,
the
lights are off.
It took them like an hour and a half. Like the response time for rescue was kind of quick. It took them like an hour and a half to get everyone out. Yeah, but it would just, like I said, if you look at the clips on YouTube, would actually show like the newsreel, like them dragging the people out and pulling the people out. Yeah, it was like carnage. Like carnage. I was just gonna say it was carnage. Oh. It was. Oh man. And then not even just listen. Like we watch the news here, they're kind of calm. Yeah. But like newsreels back then, it was like, I guess because they probably played them in between clips of movies or something. Yeah.
They had like music behind them and stuff.
Yeah, and he was like really excited. He was like, oh yes, this train came really fast. And telescope, I'm like, this dude is the excitement in his voice describing this was like just watching. It was like surreal. It's like really crazy.
Isn't that wild? Intense. Like they kind of sell it like it's a movie. They're like, this train crashed and 37 died, and they put music. They put like background music. Like they make like a trailer for a real life accident. That's crazy.
Exactly.
To me. Yeah, but that's crazy to me that they did that. Yeah. So Art, you said you took a train. Was it an Amtrak you took from Baltimore to Chicago?
I took an Amtrak from Baltimore to Chicago.
So let me ask you, because I've taken it. We've taken.
Oh my God, slowest
a few times
ever.
It's always at least 5 hours late. How long did it take you? How long did it take you from Baltimore to Chicago? It had to be forever.
I've always been this. I consider myself a wayward traveler.
Okay.
So
I'm taking Greyhound.
As I said that wayward traveler was playing in the background. But
I'll sneak that into the.
But so the way the train was, like, you leave Baltimore and then you go to DC and you sit at DC for like 45 minutes.
Okay.
And then from DC you go to Chicago. Let's say the train was supposed to be like a 19-hour train ride.
Yeah.
Coming like 19 hours. The trip going was 19 hours. The trip coming back was supposed to have been 21 or 20 and a half hours, I guess.
Yeah.
But going, it took me 23 hours to get there. Jesus. Coming back, I was on a train almost 24 hours because like I said, there were stretches where we was either stopped on the tracks for
Yep.
like an hour,
Yeah.
or just creeping at what felt like 2 miles an hour because there were freight trains coming, like I guess like through like in Indiana at some point.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I literally felt like I was going
Like you might as well
cross
drive.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done weird. Like I caught the bus from a few years, like before they had like nonstop flights from Baltimore to Chicago. I remember having an interview for the Art Institute of Chicago, and I had to be there like on a Wednesday, but I couldn't get enough days off for work.
Yeah.
To travel.
I took the you know what? I'm gonna take the bus. I'll get to Chicago at noon. My interview was at 3:00. I'll be back on the bus at midnight, back to Baltimore.
Oh my God.
So I'm using all of my days.
Yeah.
But it's just like even catching the bus is like, after a while you lose track of how long you've been on there.
Yeah.
And we got one part. At one time we got to like Silver Spring, Maryland, and we got off at like a rest stop, and this guy asked me like what day it was.
Yeah.
Thursday. He's like, oh man, I've been on a bus since Monday, and I'm coming from Seattle.
Oh,
I'm like,
yikes.
Oh,
man, but
awful.
it's weird. It's weird that like some of this travel takes as long as it does.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Especially like let's say if you're driving,
Yeah.
or you're like if you like it's like it's just 11 hours drive, but like it ends up being almost a day on the train,
Yep.
or a few days on the bus.
Well, you'd think it would be, and maybe it was then, but I was thinking if it was any cheaper, like if it was that, you would think it would be.
Oh, it's always cheap, and that's just it. It's cheaper. So like if you're trying to save money, it's cheaper to like I think when I caught the train in Chicago, it had to be like $80 or something like that.
I think it was a
for
lot
one
cheaper
way.
then, but now I've looked at, maybe it's just because where we're at in Charlotte and whatever, and so to go back to Toledo, I've thought about just because I hate that drive, like driving to the mountains,
Right.
and we could do it, but it's not that much cheaper. Like it's expensive. Some of those tickets are still expensive. Like why is it that much if it's going to take 4 times as long? I mean, I would do 4 times long if I could drink the whole time or sleep the whole time. It's worth it. But if it's the same price,
and if you get a sleeping car, it's that much more. So
yeah, you just sleep and drink. And I have a buddy who he still takes Amtrak from Chicago to Toledo back and forth every year, but because he just sits in the bar car and gets hammered, and so he'd rather do that because he doesn't have a car. So and for a plane, I guess it's that much cheaper. Except I think he likes to just drink on the way.
When you're in a train is more comfortable too. Because you have a footrest,
Oh,
you
yeah,
can walk
and you can walk
around,
around, get
you
up
got
and
a
walk
dining
around,
car, you got
Yeah,
the
the
viewing
food's-
car.
Yeah, now that
and like some of those countrysides and views are
Beautiful.
amazing.
That's right.
Okay.
I mean, it's amazing to look out the plane window too, but just like going through like all this greenery and
Yep.
Yeah.
mountains and things.
Well, and you don't have the
But then there's
security.
always that whole like if you get stalled out on the tracks,
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere, or like you're looking out the window and it's dark, you like don't know where you're at.
Yeah.
And especially in the days where we had
Yep.
cell phone, like we have no reception.
Yes.
You know, like
Oh, that's true.
you're listening for sounds and
Well, they've always
you don't
said
see aliens.
there was no security, so it's like
You want-
Amtrak was how you travel with drugs. Like if you want to bring your weed,
Yeah.
you gotta go
Yeah.
Amtrak.
right.
That's
But
actually probably why my buddy does it.
Now they check things like that. So it's
Oh,
like how the people how they travel from New York to DC
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
a gun on the train. Like you would never get.
You can't do that
far. I mean,
anymore.
yeah, because they got dogs in the train station sniffing and checking for
Yeah.
your weed stash.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Art. That was great. That was
Yeah,
you told
that
that
was
story better than I would have been able to, and that was really interesting.
I think it was sad that this guy was so close. Just another thing is like I was also trying to picture the people in the cars.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't that many cars, but then it's like how many people were they? Like one person said it looked like sardines packed in a pool of blood. So I'm like, how
Ooh.
packed were these cars? Like it's
really?
rush hour. Like the trains in DC.
Yeah.
Rush hour. Like usually as soon as you get to like Union Station, you see all these people just take off running.
Yeah.
Because they know like let's say if they're going into Virginia, they're going into Baltimore, whatever they're going at, they have to catch these commuter trains.
Right.
If you catch certain ones, they're packed to the gills.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then they also have ones where, that would have like these special trains that people would catch. You go to the back. You would have loved this, Joe. You go to the back, everyone drinking beer. They're playing cards.
Yeah.
Or they're talking about movies. That's like their everyday commute home. But the trains get so packed to the point where, like, you might have someone who they just wanted to catch the train, even though because it doesn't make all the stops, it's almost like an express train. So they'll just pack it, and you'll have people standing up on the train, and it's like, even then I'm like, okay, it's too many people. Like so, and these seats were comfortable. So I'm just imagining the train in the 50s.
Oh,
looking like a trolley or whatever. Like just how packed it was. Like literally, the top of the train just came down and smashed everyone.
Wow.
So it's like.
And rush hour the day before Thanksgiving had to be packed.
Right.
It had to be packed. Yeah. Packed like sardines in the tin. Well, that same day, I don't know if you know about this, Artstar. I know you're a sports fan. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of the Fort Wayne Pistons?
Are they like a G League basketball team or something?
No, it was the Detroit Pistons that were originally from Fort Wayne. The Fort Wayne
that I didn't know that.
The Fort Wayne Pistons on that day beat the Minneapolis Lakers, which I like to say the Minneapolis Lakers. But this was significant. They beat them 19-18 in the lowest scoring game in National Basketball Association history. Think about watching an NBA game 19-18. The event was one of several that led the NBA to implement the shot clock in 1954. So they didn't have a shot clock back then. So there was like a defensive maneuver to just hold the ball as long as you can and just dribble and not score. Pistons coach Murray Mendenhall had ordered his team to stall from the opening tip-off. And for stretches as long as 3 minutes at a time, the Pistons would just pass the ball without taking a shot. Larry Faust finally won the game for them with 6 seconds to play. The game's high score was Jack Karras with 5 points. So I looked up the Detroit Pistons. I had no idea were from Fort Wayne originally, and they were originally called the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons because in Fort Wayne, Indiana, owner was Fred Zollner, and his corporation was a foundry that manufactured pistons primarily for car, truck, and locomotive engines. I had no idea where the Detroit Pistons got their name. I thought it was like because Detroit is like a car manufacturing hub.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I assumed it was there. I had no idea that they were the Zollner Pistons, number one, and that they were from Fort Wayne. I can't believe Fort Wayne had a team ever. Fort Wayne's not a big town.
That's why I would think Fort Wayne would be like minor league or a semi-pro basketball team.
Me too, but I guess back then. And then Thursday, November 23rd, 1950, we got to do this just so we can play our new theme song.
Oh, Jesus.
Amy hates birthdays. Amy hates birthdays.
Chuck Schumer was born, Senate Minority Leader since 2019, Chair of the Senate Democratic Caucus, U.S. Senator. Now he's the Majority Leader.
That's right.
From New York since 1999. Chuck Schumer was born on November 23rd, 1950.
Okay.
Yay, Amy loves birthdays.
I love them.
Amy hates birthdays. And then...
why do you hate birthdays?
I don't hate birthdays. I explain this all the time. I hate the birthdays he chooses to cover on the show. Chuck Schumer's not that bad, but it's usually a wrestler or it's somebody from a sitcom in the 80s.
Like the Bob Orton.
Yes.
like Jeff Conaway.
That's right.
Well, that's right. I talked about Cowboy Bob Orton. I didn't even do the birthday music. I'll have to add it in later. I'll add it in post.
All right, what's next?
Okay, Friday, November 24th, 1950, an unusually strong winter storm that would eventually kill 383 Americans began east of the Appalachian Mountains. With hurricane-force winds, the storm affected 22 of the 48 at the time United States, primarily in the northeastern U.S. The storm had been first noted at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with temperatures plummeting during the afternoon, and the collision of cold and warm air masses produced winds of more than 50 miles an hour. Within 2 days, there were 211 deaths in 21 states, the majority of them heart attacks that had been brought about by shoveling snow.
Oh, my goodness.
So I didn't realize that was a common thing that people died of shoveling snow and heart attacks. My stepdad died of a heart attack right after shoveling snow.
Yeah.
I think he was using a snowblower, but it was a heavy snowblower.
In Baltimore, they used to always, whenever we had like a snowstorm or the blizzard would come through, on the news they would always sit there, do like the whole tips for lifting snow, because people would actually have heart attacks from trying to overexert themselves lifting snow because
It's heavy.
snow is dense. So sometimes you think like, oh, it's nice and fresh, it's easy. You just be going at it, heart rate gets up, and then
and that's what I looked up. So I looked up a little bit. Like it causes heart attacks more because of two things. Besides it being heavy like that, and you don't realize it's deceptively heavy. But most people don't warm up before shoveling snow because you don't think about it as a workout. You just think about it as a chore and get the snow out of here, and it can be cumbersome. It's a lot of work. And then the cold air can also constrict blood vessels.
Oh.
So, with those two combinations. So, my stepdad did just that. Like, I mean, he was old, had a lot of health problems anyway. But my mom went to, he came in from snow plowing the whole driveway. And he was like, he's 80 probably. And he sat down and was like, hey, I'm going to take a break. And she went to the bank and came back and he was dead. And it was, I think, because of that. It was because of that. Like, he's a statistic.
Yeah, that's
but I don't know if anybody kept track of that. And that same day, the Frank Lesser musical Guys and Dolls premiered on Broadway for the first time.
I was in that.
At the 46th Street Theater. You were in this production in
No.
1950?
No.
Wow, you are old.
No.
It would go on for 1,200 performances, winning the Tony Award for Best Musical. Among the songs written for the play were Luck Be a Lady and A Bushel and a Peck.
Yep, that's right.
You were in that. Who did you play?
I was Sarah, the missionary, the kind of the straight lead, not the character lead.
Not the character lead, but
the straight lead, like the love interest.
the girl who
falls in love with
right.
Sky Masterson or whatever his name
Okay.
was.
What song did you sing?
If I Were a Bell.
Could you sing a little bit of it now for us?
Oh, no, I'm not doing that.
Art wants you to. Look, Art, look how disappointed he is.
Not going to do it.
You're not going to do it for Artstar?
I'm sorry. I can't remember.
Just a
It's been long time.
smack in the face to Artstar. Poor Art. He's going to be upset now.
All right, move on.
Anyway, I recently watched Guys and Dolls because I'm still on my quest to watch all Best Picture movies.
Right.
And it's pretty gay.
Yes.
But this guy who wrote it, he wasn't gay. He was married to two women. But then again, in the 50s, if you were gay, you probably still married women. So maybe he was. But it is so it's hilarious to watch these gangs dance off with each other.
You're thinking of West Side Story. You're not watching Guys and
Oh,
Dolls.
yeah, no, that's West Side Story.
Yes.
What's Guys and Dolls? Isn't that the same thing?
No, it's not.
Oh, never mind.
Guys and Dolls is the gang. They're gangsters. They're like
Guys and Dolls are gangsters?
Guys and Dolls are
West
gangsters.
Side Story, they're gangsters.
No, West Side Story,
yeah,
they're gangs.
Officer Klumsky.
Or the Jets and the
Klumsky?
Sharks?
Yeah, those are gangs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Guys and Dolls, they're like mobsters.
I don't know anything about musicals. I really don't. I can't believe I get Guys and Dolls. I think I've always got Guys and Dolls and West Side Story mixed up.
Oh, well, let's move on.
Guys and Dolls. We're just a bunch
Joe.
of crazy guys. Okay.
We need to wind it up.
Okay. Okay, and then we're going to go to, I think we're close to the end. Oh, this one I got to share you this. Okay, we've got two more. On November 28th, 1950, it was a Tuesday. These are both good. The 723 residents of Ellenton, South Carolina, were notified on a noon radio broadcast that their town was going to be relocated so that construction could begin for the Savannah River site, a plant for the making of plutonium and tritium for hydrogen bomb construction.
Oh, Jesus.
So that just blows my mind. The EI
The whole
DuPont
town would be
Demers Company.
relocated?
Yeah, they concluded that cooling pipes for the Savannah River nuclear reactors would need to run through the land occupied by this city. So the Atomic Energy Commission would agree on December 28th to the measure. So they would pick up the homes and buildings in Ellenton, and of another 5,300 people in Aiken County and Barnwell County were moved to a site 14 miles away, and the city of New Ellington, South Carolina, was created.
I wonder how long that took.
Yeah, I know. Kidding.
I didn't look into it too much more, but just the fact that they moved that many people, they just, sorry.
And the whole buildings and everything.
Can you imagine your town? You're all going to relocate. You're going to be picked up. All your buildings and houses are being moved.
But they probably were made out of wood anyway, though, right?
They're probably real easy to move. Yeah. That blows my mind that happened.
Yeah.
And that same day, New Mexico Governor Thomas J. Mabry met with a 91-year-old man named O.L. Roberts. He was 91. Think about this in 1950. He claimed to have been the frontier outlaw William H. Bonney, known as Billy the Kid.
Oh, you're kidding.
So
I think I've heard about that.
Yeah, this old man claimed he was. So a little background on it. I'll try to get through this quickly because I think he might have been. In 1948, a probate investigator from St. Louis William V. Morrison, or you know him? 'Cause You're
No.
from St. Louis?
No.
He located an elderly man named Joe Hines, who had claimed the lands of his deceased brother. Hines told Morrison of his experiences in the Lincoln County War and surprised him by claiming that Billy the Kid was still alive. But he refused to reveal the name he had assumed or exactly where he was living. And then that same year, an elderly man named Frank J. Dalton in Lawton, Oklahoma, he claimed to be Jesse James. And he said, by the way, Billy the Kid is still alive in Hamilton, Texas, and he's known as O.L. Roberts. Like these old men claiming to be these old outlaws. And
but isn't Young Guns and Young Guns 2 kind of based on that story?
That is, which I didn't know that either. Even though I've seen those, I probably didn't pay attention. But Morrison then began a correspondence with Robert, and I'll get to that in a second. Art Morrison he got a hold of this Roberts guy, who didn't want to talk about it initially.
Right.
But he eventually got the guy to confess to being the kid, but he only agreed to admitting it if he could get a full pardon that he was promised. He was promised by the New Mexico governor in 1879, but it was withdrawn. So, and then he said, "I will tell you all this if I get a pardon." And so he detailed his supposed exploits as an outlaw. He told anecdotes that, if true, would fill in lots of undocumented gaps they had between the life of Billy the Kid.
Now, wait a minute. Did he get a pardon?
So, no, because the governor at this time, he didn't believe him. This Mabry guy, he didn't believe that he was telling the truth. So he refused to pardon him. But and this guy's 91, they hauled him all the way out back to New Mexico from Texas. And he was an old man in bad health. But he showed him, he had 26 bullet wounds and scars and things.
Holy crap.
And he still didn't believe him for whatever reason, because the timeline, there's a discrepancy with, he said he was born in 1879, and Billy the Kid should have been born in 1859, but, records weren't that great back then, so maybe it was iffy.
Maybe, yeah.
Anyway, but this guy died shortly after. This trip was rough on him, being an old man, and he died shortly after anyway, but they didn't end up pardoning him because they didn't believe him. And they've done lots of studies since then. Apparently this old man...
They couldn't do, DNA testing.
Well, that's what I'm about to get to. This old man, he to prove it, he showed him that he had this ability to slip out of handcuffs. And he said that Pat Garrett, who supposedly shot Billy the Kid back in the day, he said he actually shot another gunslinger named Billy Barlow, who had passed his body off as the kid's and allowed him to vanish and escape to Mexico for a while. And the other witnesses to the actual killing, this also goes to support this guy's theories. They didn't really know. One of them had only met Billy the Kid one time, and the other one never met him.
Yeah.
And it was dark when they actually killed him.
So it could have been anybody.
Yeah, and where they actually buried the old Billy the Kid, it's kind of since the remains have been destroyed and flooded and gone, so his remains aren't even there anymore, so you can't prove it. So they've tried to go and dig up the supposed Billy the Kid and do DNA tests, and they can't because his grave, and even where they think he is, family hasn't, whoever stopped it from happening in 2014 even. But they found these they did these computer tests with photographs throughout the 80s and 90s to try to test them, could it be him? Does
Right.
facial recognition software, and the first ones were they should match a lot more than they did, and we don't think it is. But they said if somebody's face isn't dead on in the picture, it's
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work right. So then they fixed it and did it again, and it came in the top, in the percentage where it's likely to be him. So there's been lots of books done, and the jury's still kind of out on this. Bill O'Reilly even wrote a book about it. Bill O'Reilly thinks it is him. Not that Bill O'Reilly should be believed on anything,
Right.
but there are family members of this O.L. Roberts that have said no, he's not. He was this guy. He's not. But then some people discount those as distant relatives. So there's other outlaws that they tracked down around this time that some would sign an affidavit saying that he's telling the truth. Some wouldn't sign just because they're old and they're I don't want to talk about this anymore. But so it's really, but Art's right. His name is Brushy Bill, this O.L. Roberts, and his story was largely forgotten until Young Guns 2 depicted him as the narrator of events surrounding the life and times of Billy the Kid and the Lincoln County War. So there's been lots of books about this. It's still kind of, Harry Truman believed it 100%.
Oh, wow.
That was something, but So you can really, there's a lot to read on this, but there's no real confirmation. But I think it's cool. 'Cause I kind of think, why would the guy admit it? Like,
Right.
Why would he say he's Billy the Kid if he wasn't?
Yeah.
Because he's 91. He didn't really get anything out of it. Maybe he thought he would.
Attention.
Maybe attention. But yeah. So you could probably read a lot on this. I would, like, if I had the time, I would read a bunch of books and make a conclusion. But I choose to believe, just like it's Santa Claus kind of thing. And,
all right.
And that's all I'm going to do, because the other thing we're going to cover more in December. But, you know, we've made the decision not to talk in depth about the Korean War, because it's like looking through.
Could be its own podcast.
Yeah, Wikipedia. There's just so much about the Korean War. But the big thing right now is these last few days is that Truman was really considering using the atomic bomb at this time, like towards the end of November. Like there was a lot of discussions about, yes, it's on the table. I might use the atomic bomb in Korea. So, excuse me, that comes up a little bit next episode. I'm not even drunk. I don't know what that hiccup was. Anyway.
All right.
That's November 1950. Thank you, Artstar, for being here.
Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem. It was awesome to be here.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it, because
Yay.
I don't know. It's hard for me to tell if, like, do people like this? Because I make you work, like I make you do research and do work and tell a story.
But see, like, growing up, like, I've always been big on, like, history. You know what I mean? Like, that's why, like, even when I found out that you did a podcast, like, I try to listen to them every time they come out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you know, I listen to them because, like I say, I love the witty banter between you and Amy back and forth.
Oh, thank you.
But it's also, like, some of the things I hear, you know, it's like, oh, I remember this. So, like, let me go look this up. Like, I mean, I used to always go to the when I was a kid, I would go to the library and get true crime books all the time.
Yes, me
Like,
too.
I love reading true crime books.
Okay.
You know, I'll read about people like Albert Fish, and like I would find out, like, oh, this person did what? So now I must find a book about what happened. Like, there's, like, was it the murder house in Chicago?
Yeah.
Was it H.H. Holmes, I think? Like, just, like, reading books like that, like Jeffrey Dahmer's story.
Yes.
I read Jeffrey Dahmer's book. And so,
Yes,
like,
Queen. That's
like,
how.
Yes, Queen.
That's where I got. That was Jeffrey Dahmer was my kind of
That's how you got into it?
into it. Yep, same thing.
Wow, you guys. Jeez, I'll leave you guys alone.
this stuff is intense.
Yes, it
This
is
stuff
intense.
is intense. So it's like, it's one of those things. It's cool. It's like it's crazy, but it's also cool to find out things like this. It's like, you know, it's like,
Okay. Well, Artstar.
it's kind of voyeuristic, I guess.
Well, I mean, if you're into this, I mean, you and I do a weekly podcast too, so I know where to find you when we need another guest. So we'll definitely, if you like doing this, you did a great job. So we'll bring you back. This is great. So thanks for being our Artstar. Check out Nerd Skool Podcast.
No problem.
I'm not lying when I say that Artstar, along with TBJ, they steal the show every episode. Like they just carry it away. Like Andy and I were going to do this, but these guys add something to it that's so cool. I think we
vibe off of each other. On
we
the show.
really do. It's such a funny mix.
That's what makes it.
Yeah,
it makes it fun.
It's such a
it's like even if we go off this way, we go off that way. Tiff will bring us back.
Yeah,
you know, if one of us kind of misinterpret something, Andy will jump in with like, well, actually,
it's so pedantic.
He'll come with the correction, and then Joe, you're just back there like, I don't know what the hell's going on right now, but I'm loving it.
Well, it's such a funny mix because like Art and Tiffany will get into it, and that's entertaining to me, and I love watching that. And then Art gets so excited, and I love watching him. And then Andy will correct Art. Like, Art will say something a certain way, and then Andy will correct it, like you said, pedantic. Like, he'll kind of try not to be condescending to Art, but it's like Andy kind of gives little subtle digs to Art, too. It's like, oh, that's the way Art says it. Like, it's just kind of like mess with him. So seeing those two kind of, and then Art will, like, really kind of dig, and, Andy's a super nerd, kind of. It's a funny dynamic, and they all look at me like I'm an idiot, which I am, and that's what makes it great. So listen to Nerd Skool. Check it out, Nerd Skool Pod. It's spelled SKOOL. Thanks for listening.
It's time to get out of here, Chuck Berry.
It is, and let Dale through. That was American Timelines episode 135. Thanks, Artstar.
You been down on the streets today. Say on now, baby, it's about to get crazy. Everybody's got something.
American Timelines is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network, powered by Ortho Carolina. Find out more at queencitypodcastnetwork.com.
Make me some cookies, bitch.
Whatever.